Calls for France to leave the European Union surge as more French generals are warning of an impending civil war. In this video, we're going to take a look at the latest calls for France to exit the EU, how a follow-up letter by the French military is again predicting an impending civil war if France does nothing to stop it, and why both trends point to the demise of the globalist President Macron and the rise of the nationalist populist Marine Le Pen for France's future. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Wonderful to be with you as always. We are your daily antidote to fake news, where we each and every day analyze current events in light of larger conservative trends in these crazy and turbulent times. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Also, we got a big announcement coming up this week. This news involves changes going on in my life, and it's going to change this channel. So make sure to stay tuned for more to come on that. Now, before we get into it, let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, and that's the makers of this beautiful, this awesome, this incredible fighter flare flashlight. Now, one of the best things you can invest in for your protection when the lights go out is a 6-in-1 beauty, which comes with a 3000 mAh solar-powered recharging battery. It's equipped with a high and low beam light that you can see from miles away. It has an emergency strobe light. It's got a compass. It's got a wire and rope cutter. It's got an emergency glass breaker hammer and a high-powered military-grade magnet. It is absolutely awesome. And best of all, if you click on that link below right now, you're going to get 20% off the regular price. But supply is limited, so do not wait. Click on that link below and get your super awesome fighter flare flashlight today. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. Now, we first, of course, had Brexit. I'm sure you all remember that amazing day, June 23rd, 2016, forgive me, when the British public overwhelmingly voted to leave the European Union, which they had joined back in the 1970s, after being called by then Prime Minister David Cameron fruitcakes, loonies, and closet racists. Those were just a few of the choice words he had for supporters of Brexit in the days and weeks leading up to the referendum. As it turned out, sorry Cameron, more Brits voted to leave the EU than had ever voted for a political party in Britain's history. Well, now, my friends, we're seeing more and more talk of an impending FREXIT, right? Where the nation of France looks increasingly likely to be holding a similar kind of referendum on leaving the EU. Over the weekend, during a demonstration in Paris, anti-EU protesters destroyed an EU flag in a demonstration demanding France's departure from the bullies in Brussels. The demonstrating group was made up primarily of members of the Eurosceptic party Les PATRIOT, and the founder, a fellow by the name of Florian Philippot, tweeted out, quote, claiming to lead France while remaining in the EU, the Euro, the ECHR, Schengen, and NATO is like believing you can drive a car without wheels, steering wheel, or engine. Fake. Unmask the imposters. Stop being the eternal betrayed. Now, a major issue that obviously is animating calls for France to leave the EU is the whole fiasco surrounding the COVID vaccine rollout over the last few months. The Anglo-Swedish company AstraZeneca, which the EU contracted to deliver the vaccine, had to announce that the vaccine rollout would be delayed due to production issues, blaming the EU's draconian and Byzantine regulation systems for slowing down production. And so as a result, only about 10 million Europeans got jabbed or vaccinated at the same time that the same number of Brits got vaccinated, 10 million. But of course, Britain is just one country, so Britain, which of course left the EU, ended up leaving the 27 member nations that make up the EU in the dust. So the anger over the botched rollout was pretty severe, and it remains so today. Needless to say, the EU's vaccine fiasco is promising to work itself out in some pretty severe political consequences. As the British Express is reporting, scholars at the Oxford-based think tank Europe Intelligence are arguing that the EU's vaccine crisis is spiraling out into three interrelated effects. The vaccine crisis is obviously causing, first, a prolonged lockdown. Secondly, it's causing a double-dip recession. And thirdly, it's obviously resulting in an anti-incumbent mood among voters. And we saw the political consequences of these three interrelated effects on display in the Madrid elections just last week. You'll definitely want to check out the video we did on the elections in the capital city of Spain. It's going to so encourage you. We saw the center-right People's Party destroying the ruling socialists by campaigning vigorously on ending the lockdown in Madrid. The leader of the People's Party, Isabel Díaz Ayuso, she was highly criticized by the media and the political left for being one of the most outspoken critics against the lockdown in Spain. And we could see how the citizens of Spain's capital city felt like that. They were 100% behind her. So you'll definitely want to check out that video, because we look into whether this election in Madrid may indeed be a bellwether of what to expect to sweep across the European continent in their elections in the months and years ahead. Which means that we can now circle back to all of this stuff going on with FREXIT. Now, a number of articles have been coming out of late talking about the very real possibility of two things happening in France over the next year. First, we may see for the first time a nationalist populist like Marine Le Pen take the presidency. And secondly, she indeed may permit a referendum on France's continued membership with the EU. The two trends are, of course, interrelated. Le Pen has been surging in the polls of late. She's passing Macron, but guaranteeing her victory in the first round of presidential elections. The key is whether she can prevail in the second round, the runoffs, where the president has to get at least 50% of the vote. The French presidential election isn't far off. It's just next year. And Le Pen is beating Macron upwards about 5 or 6 points in the polling. And if she can tap into this FREXIT fever, as it were, she may have found her winning issue to finally unseat Macron. And something else is brewing that seems to be catapulting both Le Pen into leadership and a FREXIT referendum in reality. And that's the continuing threat of a civil war in France. A brand new open letter written by a group of active French military personnel was published over the weekend. It's a letter addressed to their president, Emmanuel Macron, and it offers a very ominous warning of a civil war brewing in the nation after all the concessions that their state has made to militant Islam. Now, this open letter strikes a similar tone to the one that was published just a few days back, about a week ago, that argued the same thing. That letter was written and signed by over 25 retired generals, thousands of retired as well as active military personnel, warning of a civil war breaking out in France because of the epidemic of Islamic terror that's plagued their nation over the last several years. If you want some backdrop to that letter, make sure to check out my latest video on the publication of the very first letter, and also on a devastating poll that came out last week that showed that 73% of the French population agreed. They agreed with the assessment of the open letter that their nation is indeed disintegrating, with 58% of the French public supporting the letter's call to oust Macron and restore the national sovereignty of France by the military. Now, nearly 60%, I should note too, of the French public sides with the sentiments of this letter, which ultimately calls for a coup against the Macron government if he fails to act decisively against militant Islam within France. You'd want to definitely to check out that video. Well, now we have a new letter. A new open letter, this time not written by retired generals, but active generals in the French military. It was left unsigned, largely, of course, for concern of retribution. Military personnel have been reportedly hauled in front of tribunals as part of the disciplinary actions against their participation in the first letter. So this letter, the second one, remains unsigned, but it's open for signing by the general public. And as of the making of this video, it has over 100,000 signatures. And here's a sample of the letter. Quote, "We are what the newspapers have called the fire generation. Men and women, active soldiers of all armies and of all ranks, of all opinions. We all love our country. These are our only claims to fame. And while we cannot by law express ourselves with our face uncovered, it is equally impossible for us to stay silent." And it goes on to accuse Macron of making concessions to Islamism on French soil, while the country's military has been spilling its blood to fight it against it in Afghanistan and Mali and Central African Republic or elsewhere. The authors have also indicated that at least some of them have taken part in the domestic Operation Sentinel, launched after the devastating 2015 Charlie Hebdo terror attacks, and they witnessed certain ethno-religious communities in France completely detached from the rest of the country. For such communities, quote, France means nothing but an object of sarcasm, contempt, or even hatred. And like the previous letter, this new one warns the Republic's authorities of an impending civil war with the very existence of France being at stake. Quote, once again, civil war is brewing in France, and you, Macron, know it perfectly well. And the letter concludes by stating that we are not talking about extending your mandates or conquering others. We're talking about the survival of our country, the survival of your country. It's obviously a very powerful letter. And the increasing concern over the Civil War suggests that the majority of French are ready to take their nation in new directions, as far away as possible from the current globalist governance led by their current president, Emmanuel Macron. Now, before you go, you'll definitely want to check out my latest video. I just uploaded it on how a massive anti-woke movement rising up all over the nation is happening as we speak. We're going to look at a number of areas where woke warriors are getting pushed back like they never imagined. We're going to see an overflow crowd for an America First rally in Florida that shows just how animated patriots are across the country. And we're going to together celebrate the makings of what looks to be the formation of a red wave in 2022 like we've never seen. You're not going to want to miss this, so make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.